The transcripts are now here, and we can see exactly how far Judge Chutkan went to rig the trial for Donald Trump in 2024. Big questions about how Donald Trump's defense team is going to get through 12 million documents, which is about 10 Washington monuments of copy paper stacked from floor to the sky. 10 of them! That's a very tall building. How can they possibly get through it? Well, the judge, during the hearing, said a bunch of stuff like, well, they've already seen a lot of this, and it came from Trump's organization. You knew that they were investigating him, so why didn't you just start preparing your defense years ago? All of those types of arguments were used to justify setting a trial right in the middle of an election, and people like Christie are very excited about it. This guy, on whatever news station he's from, CNN, says this is going to bog Trump down, and he's not going to be able to campaign in ordinary fashions. Maddow is screaming about how if Trump wins, the country's over, and he'll never leave office. And so we know they're flailing around like the T-1000 on the last scene of Terminator, gasping for air, trying to get out of the molten lava. And that's why they've got to do all of this stuff. That's why they have to bend the rules, shatter the precedent of justice to create trials that are without any prior precedent in American history for a case like this. Julie Kelly has the transcripts from the proceeding that took place in front of Judge Chutkan's courtroom. Her Twitter account is at Julie_Kelly too. If you're not following her, you absolutely should be. I mean, she's critical. If you're interested in the stuff we do here, she does amazing work. She says, "New, I have a transcript from the Judge Chutkan hearing, and it's even worse than we knew. Chutkan marveled at Jack Smith's rapid discovery production and downplaying various other things." And pausing on discovery, remember, they've had years to investigate all of this. And the highlight that we saw yesterday was that the government, through Molly Gaston, was very organized. They had highlighters, sticky notes, they had, index cards organized alphabetically, very beautiful. And that was justification to the defense not needing to review anything because it was so nicely organized. They said they even created a roadmap for the defense about the prosecution's theory of the case. Wow, that's incredible. So the defense doesn't need to do any work because the prosecutor, that is, in my opinion, unjustly prosecuting Trump, they've done all the heavy lifting for you. Now, they also downplayed the fact that the Department of Justice could not name a single case in the DC district that went from indictment to trial in 5 months, not one. That was their request. They originally wanted this trial in January. Judge said, January is a little too soon, government. Don't be ridiculous. How's March sound? Trump goes, oh, you're giving us 2 extra months to go through 12 million pages of documents? And it's not just the 12 million, it's audio interviews, video recordings, all of the other spreadsheets and, technical printouts and blah, blah, blah. Insane. Here's the transcript. Says, okay, this is an excerpt, says, and the government hasn't identified any cases in this district where the length of time between the indictment and trial was roughly 5 months. Although they did point to the Manafort case in Eastern District of Virginia, which went to trial roughly 5 months after the superseding indictment. So that would be the second or third or whatever indictment that came out. The court says, this is the Judge Chutkan speaking, and we can see there, okay, the U.S. Department of Justice doesn't have any precedent at all. They've never had another case ever that they were able to identify that went to trial in 5 months, but they asked for 5 months for Trump. Why is that? Didn't Merrick Garland tell us that this investigation, this January 6th case, was the most intensive the Department of Justice has ever done? So why do they need to go so quickly for such an extensive case? Doesn't Trump have due process? Where are the prosecutors and the judges across this country speaking out about this? That the DOJ that's supposed to swear an oath, they have stupid little badges and all the crap that they have, and all the rules and parties they go to and all these things. They always tell us that they adhere to justice, that they care about justice, not convictions. Where are they talking about any of this? Do they care at all? No, most do not. So the DOJ shatters the norms because Trump, obviously, although they did point to another case in the Manafort case, which is a different jurisdiction, obviously not a president, and it's 5 months after the superseding indictment, which means we had a first indictment come. So I don't know how much time between the first indictment and the superseding indictment, so it's not even a good conversation. It's despicable that the DOJ would even ask for it, but they did. The court says, I'll note that many years ago, when I was trying murder and conspiracy cases across the street in Superior Court, and we got an update on this from our locals. I don't remember the background of Judge Chutkan, but apparently she was a criminal defense attorney before going into private practice. And yesterday, when we were reading through this, when I heard her say, I was trying murder and conspiracy cases, I was thinking, was she she's saying because she was prosecuting them, that language, and I didn't know if that was a rough translation or something, but it's an interesting thing to say. I would think that that's something that a prosecutor or a judge would say, not necessarily a defense attorney. But so she's a defense attorney saying, I was trying murder and conspiracy cases across the street, perhaps as a public defender. We got witness names on the day of trial and witness statements and grand jury testimony before the witnesses testified and sometimes after the witnesses testified. So this adds some clarity. So she's just explaining that when I was a public defender, I had to go quickly. I had to go very, fast. And I don't know what the context is or if she felt like she was doing a competent, capable job there or that's ethical or whatever. We got witness names the day of trial and we just tried murder cases and you didn't interview the witnesses or know what they were going to say. You just figured it out. You just they're just throwing cases. Like, just because you went through it doesn't make it right. I've seen a lot of things in the practice of law that happen, but that doesn't make it right. It happens every day, but it doesn't make it right, doesn't make it lawful or the way that things should go. So I would have a real concern, okay, if that was my brother or my family member who was being represented by an attorney, a defense attorney, and that defense attorney got the witness name the day of trial. I'd be like, what? That's what's happening here? And judge, you think that's acceptable in your courtroom? Are you kidding? So that's justification because you went fast when you were a government defense attorney or working in the defense, that you can just say now that because you were disadvantaged that Trump's lawyers need to be disadvantaged or something? Doesn't make much sense, but okay. We got witness names on the day of trial and witness statements and grand jury testimony before they testified. And while the discovery rules here in federal court, this is Judge Chutkan speaking, provide far more disclosure in advance, the manner in which the discovery in this case has been organized indicates that the government has made a considerable effort to expedite review, all right? This is a judge in America speaking. The Department of Justice organized their case well, so the defense doesn't need to do the work that the defense says they need to do. And let's just zoom out on this just to hear how reprehensible this is. We are in an adversarial system. We're supposed to be working against each other to win. This would be like a football team saying, you don't need to prepare for this because we've already told you what plays we're going to run, and you can just trust us to run these plays. So don't even prepare. And then we're going to come out to the field and the other team is just going to say, well, we didn't prepare. We don't know anything about anything. We don't even know what plays to run. We have no evidence. We don't even know what the rules of the game are. We know nothing except what they told us. And then when the other team loses, they get blown out of the water. They're supposed to be shocked or something, or, this is a big surprise. This is obviously unfair. But the judge is pointing to this as saying they worked really hard to help the people that they're trying to destroy. It's crazy town. So she continues, Julie Kelly's reporting. She says that she confronted the judge, John Lauro, Trump's lawyer. There are 12 million plus pages of documents. Most of it's related to Trump. They say he must have reviewed it already. Here's what the judge says. All right, Trump defense. The point here, in other words, this is not brand new information, this discovery. Some of it are statements. Some of it are materials of your client's own creation. That's Trump's. In other words, none of this, you're not seeing this for you personally maybe, this may be new to you, but this is material that's been reviewed, at least for privilege. Some of this material are statements of your client and materials created by your client or entities associated with them. Why? That's not brand new information, is it? And this is the point yesterday where I almost jumped out the window and we were just thinking, yes, it is brand new information because Donald Trump is one man and a part of a giant operation and a giant entity. And just because some other person created it doesn't mean that every single person automatically knows what's inside. Multiple lawyers have to review it all if they're all going to be up to speed on the case. Everybody's got to read the full book to understand how it ends. Not every lawyer gets to read one chapter and then assemble a book report. They've all got to read the full book to understand what happens. And so if they have 1,000 people who all know little bits and pieces because they scrape this data from this and this and this and the other thing, the judge says, well, somebody knew about it, which is essentially what she's saying. Well, it was created by the Trump organization, so somebody there knew about it, so why doesn't Trump know about it? It's absurd, really, is what it is. So it's not brand new. Laura flips. Of course it is. Of course. To a criminal defense lawyer, it's brand new information. He made this point yesterday. That's like saying if a CEO of a public company was before your honor and had responsibility for running a company, oh, they've seen all the information that the company has. Why do they need time to prepare? They've already had it for years. Court says, no, that's a different point. Because it's information from the company doesn't mean that the defendant had seen it, but a lot of the material your client created, which I still don't know exactly what that means specifically, but okay, all right, judge, how many of the 12.5 million pages were Trump truths or Trump tweets? How many? 1,000? How about that? We'll round up. We'll just call it 100,000. We'll call it 1 million. Okay, let's just say there's 1 million Trump tweets in there. That still leaves us with 11 million pages. So how much of that did Trump create? So, okay, we'll subtract 11 million. So we still need time for the 11 million. We'll take from 12 to 11 because Trump made 1 million tweets. We still need years to go through the rest of the 11 million pages. But she says, no, a lot of this material is material your client created or materials that your client's lawyers, maybe not you specifically, saw and reviewed and had possession of before this case. And that's where we get the end of that transcript. But Julie Kelly continues to report, and here's what the transcript says. Lauro keeps objecting, says, I understand the court, but Mr. Lauro, for one thing, okay, you suggest that the defense needs a substantial amount of time to investigate, for example. But the existence of the grand jury investigating in this case has been known since September 2022, almost a year. That's been public knowledge. So in other words, Trump should have known what a secret grand jury was doing and started to prepare his defense in anticipation of charges that he doesn't know whether they're going to come or if they do come, what they involve. So he's just got to be constantly preparing his defense. It's an absurd thing for a judge to even say. The identity of many of the witnesses who have testified in the grand jury and potential trial witnesses have been a matter of public record. So what? He had no obligation to start defending himself. And given that Mr. Trump likely knows most of the witnesses the government, or many of the witnesses the government would call likely, several of whom, according to at least page 7 of the indictment, may be staff and associates. So why would the defense need 2 years to investigate? You guys can do it in just a few months. The defense says, Your Honor, because there's no obligation for any American citizens to start conducting their own defense during a grand jury investigation and prepare for a trial when we don't even know what the issues are and what the charges are. The court says, well, there may not be an obligation, but, you know, certainly a defense attorney, a good defense attorney, if you were a good one, knowing that their client was under investigation by a grand jury, knowing who the witnesses, some of the witnesses were in the grand jury, would already start, wouldn't they? Wouldn't you start if you knew it was coming, right? Isn't that what a good defense attorney would do? Saying you're a bad defense attorney. Defense says, Your Honor, I was not hired during that period of time. The government never communicated, as far as I know, to President Trump's counsel regarding the theories of the investigation, the matters under investigation, the statutes at issue, the witnesses. None of that was ever provided. They could have done that. They could have said, yes, here's what we're doing, but they didn't because they knew the judge would just let them get away with this. Kelly says, Chutkan keeps saying the case is not going to trial in 2026. Says, I don't think you're going to go through discovery page by page. A significant amount of this discovery is duplicative, so you're just going to flip through it. A significant amount of it is you already have in your possession or know about. Okay, that's fine. It could be in their possession. Like they've got, yeah, they said they downloaded terabytes of data. It took them a full weekend. Then they had to get the hard drive sent over. So yeah, they're in possession of it, but it's just files. So they know about it. So what does this even mean? It's not the point about possession. It's not a point about knowledge. It's about processing it. And whether or not you, the defense lawyer, are seeing it for the first time, Mr. Trump has been ably represented by experienced counsel during the whole pendency of this investigation. This is not, it's not an unveiling, a surprise he's been indicted. You've known this was coming. Mr. Trump's counsel has known this was coming for some time. And I'm sure any able, diligent, and zealous defense counsel would not have been sitting on their hands waiting for an indictment. So she's basically almost threatening them now. Surely you don't need more time. You understand? You don't need more time to read all of this, because if you needed more time, then that would mean that you're being unethical. You're not being diligent. You're not being zealous. If you're requesting time for me, that means you were just being lazy these last couple years when the government was rigging this all up to indict Trump during an election. You can just pick up right where you left off, because I know you're capable and you would never commit some malpractice, right? And you're not going to commit malpractice as this continues. Julie Kelly's jaw's on the floor. Obviously, that's a very appropriate reaction. Yeah, we feel you on that one, Julie. Chutkan continues to scold Trump's lawyers for not going through the trove. Defense attorney says, Your Honor, I doubt that. You can't push a button these days to get documents sorted. You have to go through the documents. No person who is charged with a crime should be in some way disadvantaged because they didn't do or anticipated what crime would be in connection with the grand jury proceeding. And they didn't do, or whether or not they did do, any kind of research or examination prior to this charge. We start at the time of the charge, Your Honor. It would be highly prejudicial if Your Honor took into account any time before the charge was entered and suggest that the defense had some obligation to conduct the investigation prior to the time the charges were brought. So they should have hired a psychic to theorize about what Jack Smith was going to do and then start preparing a defense for charges that are completely unjustified from their perspective. perspective in the first place. But they're also saying that Trump shouldn't be treated any differently, right? Are other defendants expected to do this? As she said, nobody's above the law. Everybody gets equal treatment, blah, blah, blah. No other defendants, this has never come up before. Hey, Your Honor, we need a motion to continue for this person you're representing on a DUI. Well, why do you need more time? Why didn't you start investigating this last year before they turned 21? Huh? Well, I didn't know. Well, you don't get any more time now. Your client's guilty. It's like Looney Tunes. It's crazy. He says, I'm not suggesting you had an obligation. I'm simply suggesting you had an opportunity. But she's using the opportunity to justify giving them more time. So she's actually holding that against them. You should have looked into it further. It's really troubling that Judge Chutkan has done this. But what I think this indicates is that this train is off. Okay, I do not expect her to try to deviate this trial. This is a judge who has a mission, and they are going to be holding this aggressively. They're going to do everything they can to make this stick. Why? Because it's part of the long-term tactic. It's part of the long-term strategy. All of the Republicans are giddy about it. Democrats are thrilled about it. Christie says Trump's in big trouble. Other candidates are salivating, waiting for Trump to be taken off the field. Here's what Christie says.
You know, what matters is the truth. And you could say I'm attacking Donald Trump, and I understand that's the way some people would look at it. But what I'm doing is telling the truth about Donald Trump, and I'm unafraid to do so. And that's why I didn't raise my hand on the stage on Wednesday night, because the minimum bar we should have for someone to be running for president of the United States is that they're not indicted or convicted of felonies, let alone the underlying conduct that is in the classified documents case, the January 6th case. These are acts that are just beneath the office he held when he committed those acts when he was president, and the acts that he's committed since he was president are well beneath the bar we should have for anybody who aspires to be president again. So what I'm doing is telling the truth to folks, and I'm doing it in the way I've always done it. Absolutely looking into the camera like I'm looking this morning and telling people what I believe in my heart and what I know from my experience as a prosecutor. This guy is in big trouble. He's in big trouble because he did it to himself, and he's inflicting that damage now on our party and on our country. That's not right, and someone needs to stand up against that. I'm the one who's doing it.
All right, he is a part of the GOP. He's going to be joined by Asa Hutchinson, and there are others, I think, who are going to join this contingent, right? I think you'll see maybe Haley jump on board. Certainly Pence is going to jump on board. You're going to see this fracture. We'll see what DeSantis does, but the GOP party itself is going to get on board, part of them, with this message, okay? Enough already. Trump's been indicted. He's been convicted if they can get it done. That's why he's got to go, and whether it's a brokered convention or whatever they try to plot, this is the framework that they're establishing. And we're going to see this come to fruition months from now. Now, this is over from CNN. This guy is really articulating what happens at a criminal trial. And unlike the other Trump trials that we've covered here, in particular the E. Jean Carroll case, when Trump was not present, that's because that was a civil case. And Trump could waive his presence there. There's no criminal liability there. It's just monetary damages. So because criminal charges might lead to incarceration, you've got to be there. Because if you're convicted, you're going into custody if it's a prison mandatory type of a sentence. So it's a different scheme. And now we see that if Trump has got 4 criminal trials back to back, then they may keep him from campaigning, from getting out there, visiting the various states. And if some of these trials are not televised, then a lot of this will be happening behind closed doors. We can't see it. So there's a downside. There's an advantage and a disadvantage, you could argue. Let's see what CNN says.
I think yesterday was a reality hit for Donald Trump's team. It is clear we are going to have 1, maybe 2 trials between now and the election. When you're on a criminal trial, you have to physically be there as the defendant. We remember the E. Jean Carroll trial a few months ago. That was a civil case. Trump opted to skip that. He will have to be physically in the courtroom. It's a full day. It's a long day. Trials usually start 9, 10 in the morning, go to 4, 5 in the afternoon. He will be in D.C. He will be in Florida. And so he will be physically off the campaign trail. And I think it'll be really interesting to see from a political perspective, how does that play? Because presumably he'll be getting wall-to-wall coverage, not the good kind when you're a defendant in a criminal case, but presumably he's going to get a ton of media coverage, but he's not going to be out there at rallies. He's not going to be able to go not door to door, but, shake hands with people and be mixed in with the normal type of campaign activity. I don't know how that's going to play ultimately.
It's going to be curious to see. I mean, some people, like we've seen on other networks, have said that Trump does not want this stuff out in front of the public. That's why he wants his Georgia case, for example, removed from Georgia into federal court. I'm not so sure I buy that. I think that if this was broadcast across national TV, I think that Trump, it would break everything. It would break everything. And for huge swaths of people to see what a joke these prosecutions really are, I think that they're probably more concerned about that than the opposite. Look at the reaction to the mugshot and how irritated they were. Can you imagine what we'll do with Fani Willis in a courtroom testifying or prosecuting Donald Trump? Oh my gosh, it'll be incredible. So this is what is happening. These people are orchestrating this. They are breaking glass in case of emergency. And it's because they have this mentality. And, I'd say I almost feel bad for Rachel Maddow. I really don't. But she's working 1 day a week now. And so I don't know what she's doing, spending most of her time on. But when she emerges from her theorizing or whatever, this is what we get. The reason I'm going to play this, it's not because I want to make us all suffer through her. It's because I want to just communicate where their mindset is at. Like, they think Trump is Hitler. They think Trump is the worst thing that's ever happened. And that if he wins, he'll never leave again. Even though it's like he won last time and he left. So what are you talking about? It's just people creating their own fictions and hyperventilating about this stuff on their news networks for their audiences. MSNBC allows this to happen once a week or so. Here's what she sounds like.
The election means one of two things if this is the way he's going to approach it. Either he loses the election and he goes to prison.
Which I don't think is going to happen.
He wins
Secret
the election.
Service.
He doesn't go to prison. And is that for life that he gets to be president? Will we keep having more elections? Or no?
Well, no, he's got 2 terms. I mean, Trump has been the person who's actually adhered to the Constitution. Okay, he ran and campaigned in 2016 like Hillary, lock her up and all that stuff. Turned out that was just a bunch of campaign bravado, a lot of big talk. Didn't actually cross that line, cross that threshold. I would presume because some people in the Department of Justice talked him out of it. Maybe he should have crossed that line and actually done what the Democrats are doing. Maybe we wouldn't be in this position in this country we're currently at. But if he had done that, they would have been crying. They would have been flipping out about it. And really with good reason, because it would have been probably unnecessarily crossing a certain line that didn't need to be crossed, and we could all move on. But they didn't let that happen. The Democrats couldn't move on. They sabotaged Trump from day one with the Christopher Steele dossier, multiple impeachments, and they have no qualms about it. Nobody's going to prison on their end. Nobody's even apologized for the 51 so-called intelligence people, right? Everything is fake. Everything is rigged. They'll do anything that they can possibly get to stop this man because they're so deluded that he's this tyrant for which there's no evidence. He apparently was going to not leave last time, and he did, but she's regurgitating this. We already heard this last season, Rachel.
Every election is a new opportunity for him to go to prison. Do you think he allows us to have new elections? I mean, if those are the stakes, if winning the election is his plan to stay out of prison,
why did he leave?
What happens in that election if and when he does not win it? Does that kind of an election end with a graceful concession to a fair and square re-elected President Biden?
Nope.
I mean, if Trump and his supporters see the stakes as losing and going to prison or winning and being president and probably president for life.
So that's the psycho part. Nobody ever thinks that. Nobody wants that. But she's right about that. Those are the stakes. She got that one dead on. Nobody's missing that one. We recognize that. That is the situation here because her side, her people have made it that. They've weaponized the DOJ. They've weaponized the courts and these various prosecutions to protect their people and to prosecute the people that they dislike. So no, this is the consequence of wrecking the legitimacy of your institution. If nobody believes the DOJ anymore, if nobody trusts the FBI anymore, if everybody thinks Jack Smith is just a puppet of Merrick Garland and Joe Biden, which he is, then your verdicts and all of these efforts are meaningless. And when you come out and you tell us, just like all of the other institutions have done, CDC promised us this and Biden's DHS promises us that, and it's a nonstop thing, right? They tell us something, it's not true. So when they come out again and they tell us, no, election was perfectly free, perfectly fair, you're all liars again for the second time, nobody is going to buy it. Rachel's right about that. But the consequences are due to them eroding what used to be institutions that at least a portion of America relied upon. They wrecked all of that. COVID was the start. We're now seeing justice being treated like monopoly money. It's justice monopoly. It's stuff that is not even real. It's all just fake transactional indictments, motions for filing, or having court dates set. It's all just to get to an end, which is to prosecute Trump. And these people sleep well at night because this is how they think. This is what they do all day in their little social clubs. And then they come on their Monday show and rant like this.
How should we expect that he and the Republican Party and Republican officials in swing states are going to handle the conduct of that election that Trump may very well lose? And because we are prone to forget, we have to say out loud, that we would be remiss, we would be willfully naive.
Just say it. Just say it.
To ask that question as if our politics exists in a vacuum.
Spit it out.
Somewhere outside the rest of our news.
Just say it, for crying out loud.
As if the politics pages are totally different than the crime pages, right? As if we are not in a moment where far-right politics is coincident with far-right violence.
Okay,
with regular shows of
point.
force from paramilitary extreme right groups and with acts of violence by people who are explicitly and admittedly motivated by far-right eliminationist political ideas. We are prone to forget, but we do not have to.
I think she's going to start crying there. So hopefully somebody has a box of tissues over there for her. So, all right. You know, she had to tell us that point, which I'm sure is all written out there on a nice teleprompter that she wrote, took the last week to write on that. These are the people, okay? They think that Trump is going to take over the country and he's never going to let it go. And so if this is your perspective, how can you not do anything to stop this? How do you not break all of the rules? Because this is do or die for them. And they are just going nuts. They're hysterical. Now, this is a funny exchange. Now, this guy is named Medhi Hassan. And I'm not going to presume what this guy's ethnicity is. It's a complicated thing, so I'm not going to make comments on that. But here is an exchange, his perspective, where he says that essentially Judge Chutkan, who happens to be a black woman, has exacted some sort of revenge upon Donald Trump. Here's what he says.
Donald Trump is a man with a long history of racism, one that long precedes his presidency and his political career. He has had a problem with people of color for decades. We know he especially has a problem with black people. And we know above all else that he has a real issue with black women, with strong black women.
Really?
Don't take my word for it. Take Donald Trump.
What?
He led a chant of send her back against Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and even spread vile and racist conspiracy theories about her personal life. He called Vice President Harris nasty and disrespectful, and just this week mocked the way she talks.
She is nasty and disrespectful.
She speaks in rhyme.
Yeah, she says stuff like the USB ports on the bus go round and round.
It's weird. It's weird. But she has bad moments. And
in rhyme? What do you...
Well, the way she talks, the bus will go here and then the bus will go there because that's what buses do.
I love electricity.
It's weird.
I love USB ports.
He accused Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson of being disrespectful. There it is again. Towards the white GOP senators who were questioning her. And even his own former advisor, Omarosa Manigault Newman, wasn't spared. He called her a black...
All right, we get the point. Now what's your point?
The fact that at the center of his many legal troubles right now are 3 strong black women.
Oh.
First up, Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis, who this week became the first prosecutor to get a mugshot of Trump and is now prosecuting him for 13 felony counts, including racketeering for attempting to overturn the 2020 election results. Remember, Jack Smith and Merrick Garland didn't insist on a mugshot for Trump in the 2 federal indictments against Trump in Florida and D.C. Fannie Willis did.
Fannie.
And despite Trump's very personal attacks on her and on...
All right, so let's get to the point about Chutkan. All right, pick it up. Here's his point.
Third, there's New York Attorney General Letitia James, who will be the first about his actions and conversations leading up to January the 6th, saying, quote, presidents are not kings and plaintiff is not president.
All right, there's a point to this because Jordan Peterson's going to blow him out of the water here in a minute. Hang on.
Sacrifices, their strength, their activism, their votes. But this month in particular, we should thank black women for doing what a bunch of white guys have failed to do for years. Hold Donald Trump, hold a former president accountable for his alleged criming. And the fact that they're the ones doing it must be killing Trump.
Yeah, so black women are going after Trump and doing stuff that white men would no longer do. Okay, so these are the people who scream about racism in America, and this is how they talk. It's some of the most racist stuff we've ever played here, actually, about how different races should be attacking each other and prosecuting stuff, taking Trump out of context as though he can't criticize people because they're black. He can't criticize women because they're black. Is that really what you're saying here? That's kind of nuts. It's pretty racist to say that. It's also pretty racist to say that these women are black and going after Trump and that race has anything to do with this. I thought that this was something that was about justice, not about race and ethnicity. But this is what they do on MSNBC. And I got to just share this with you because I was laughing my little caboose off yesterday. Jordan Peterson responded accordingly. This is the tweet that he shared when Medhi Hassan dropped that monologue on Twitter. Jordan Peterson responded. He said, you know, Medhi, you're not really brown, more like a light tan, just like white people. Plus, you're a Caucasian by definition, buddy. And that last buddy at the end got me there. Plus, you're a Caucasian by definition, buddy. Now, it didn't just end there. This is what happened next. So Medhi had a little bit of an exchange for him, and here's what happened. Medhi said, nothing to see here. Just Jordan Peterson, a white man, telling me I'm not brown. I'm actually white. Also, how am I Caucasian by definition? Curious emoji, says Medhi. So Jordan Peterson responds, okay, well, you're not black. You're not Asian. What's left? Caucasian. It's not that difficult. And I didn't call you white, not that I care. I pointed out that your true color is tan, which it is, more or less like mine. And your idiot, a white man comment, implying that I have no right to notice whatever the hell your color is not the least bit intimidating or damning as far as I'm concerned. Now, Medhi responds. He says, you know, India is literally in Asia, right? Where did you get your doctorate from again, Jordan? Jordan says, have it your way, you boring bloviator. I really don't care if you think you're green. Fine, you're not Caucasian, you're black or Asian or whatever you want to be, just like all you bloody progressives. For anyone who cares, here's what Wikipedia has to say. Citing to the Caucasian race on Wikipedia says, 19th century classifications of the peoples of India were initially uncertain if the Dravidians and the Sinhalese were Caucasoid or separate Dravidia race. But by and in the 20th century, anthropologists predominantly declared Dravidians to be Caucasoid. Oh, man. So after that entire race baiting, black guy, white guy thing, all the things, Medhi Hassan is just a Caucasian, just like me. Well, isn't that just a shame, Medhi? You learned something today from Jordan Peterson. Buddy? All right, so here is an actual black man, and somebody might want to alert Medhi Hassan to this fact. Byron Donalds, who actually can speak with some authority on that. This is Byron Donalds talking about Judge Chutkan being somebody who is obstructing the 2024 election.
Hunter Biden's the bad man, but Joe Biden is the actual big guy. And that's what you have here. Compare that, what they're doing in federal court and in Georgia with Donald Trump, where they have all these weird conspiracy-laden theories to bring indictments. This is nuts. And what this judge in D.C. is doing is worse because she actually is playing politics. To be honest with you, Maria, I've never seen a court move this fast to bring a trial. The only way I've seen it move this fast is if the defendant requests it. But that's not what's occurred here. She wants to interfere in this election, and she is using her courtroom to do it.
And she is doing it. She's doing it right now openly, not even really trying to hide it. Very bad justifications for an early trial. But because the left wants Trump removed, they don't care. Judges, prosecutors, other politicians, people who normally will scream at us about due process and justice are the ones wrecking it, rigging the trial, thereby rigging the election. We'll continue to cover, my friends. Thank you for joining. Thank you for subscribing as we do.